this way.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
That quieted everyone.
Sorta.
All right, and if we need to use wireless, we can switch to this one.
Okay. All right, folks. I think we're gonna get started. Welcome to this month's meeting, of the Nebraska-Iowa MUFON meeting. We're all about the study of scientific the UFOs for the benefit of humanity. As the world's oldest and largest UFO phenomena investigative body, we aim to be the inquisitive minds seeking answers to the most ancient question: are we alone in the universe? This is a picture that was sent to me by Maureen Richmond, that she sent kind of UFO art. I thought it was kind of interesting. It's supposed to be in Denmark somewhere, possibly. Conspiracy theories are in the basement we don't have. It's the Nebraska MUFON team. Got Kyle Finley, state director. Fred Ziwi is assistant state director. Tamara Steyer is chief investigator and it's a field investigator, and John Barda, field investigator trainee. He's not a trainee anymore. How come yeah, really? Dave Paris is a consultant, and Dr. Cash is also a consultant for yeah. The Iowa team is myself, Greg Anderson, I'm state director. Dave Kreider is the chief investigator. Dave Pratt, Larry Moore, and Beverly Moore are all field investigators. And Keen Tiedemann is also a field investigator. MUFON News says the executive director for MUFON, Dave McDonald, says it's what time of year. So I sat sitting at my desk suffering a severe case of writer's block, trying to determine a suitable topic for the November issue, which of course leads right to Thanksgiving. I was thinking about all the things that MUFON, the organization, has to be thankful for. This list can go on and on. First and foremost, however, has got to be our members. From general membership to board of directors and everyone in between, the group is top notch. That does not mean that we don't disagree. We do, but for a very few exceptions, we can disagree without being disagreeable. Believe me, that means a lot to any organization. Then there is the fresh, bright atmosphere sweeping through MUFON, the growing interest in the global scale, the impressive membership growth, the increased stature, acceptance, and respect for our organization. As long as we stay the current course, MUFON will have a wonderfully bright future. And again, I'm trying to sell more MUFON calendars here. You can get to go into MUFON and in their store and get their 2024 calendar. And the November issue has a case that we did in Iowa. Yeah, Roger's got one. Here's our year-to-date case count. We've got total yearly cases for Iowa has been 51, and for Nebraska's had 25. We had a pretty good June and September, so that really pushed us up there quite a bit. Here's the monthly count. You can see Iowa hasn't had any in November, but Nebraska's had 2. Again, the yearly totals. Here's our meeting numbers, the number of people we've had come to our meetings. And again, this is the statistics that MUFON does on the states. Right now, Iowa's 30th and Nebraska's 34th, but we're both at 100%, which is good, the good part. And investigator case review. I think we'll start with Kyle.
Yeah, I don't have too much on this one. Yeah, this one here, it was just kind of in the case. I can't remember what it was like a few years ago, but they just sent it to me. It was an investigator cleanup that we need the at least resolve it. So I just put it as information only since it was in 1972. All it had was the short description, the bright glowing static entity near a high voltage power line. And there was no longer description, and I don't have anything from the witness. So information only is what I had to close it out as. This was down in Lincoln. And next one will be Barta. We just threw this one in last minute, so we're just gonna go through a few of these images. Watch out for the cable.
Yep.
Mr. Barta.
This was a series of pictures, and the only description was bullet missile. I mean, I think they're pretty pictures, but I contacted them about 5 times, or tried to. Only got a reply on the first one that said, we send sunrise or sunset pictures as we can in real time to each other, and this is what she caught. I hope she helps us out, as she is the actual visual witness. And that was from Shannon. Indicated that they're in a different time zone. Lynn was the photographer, and O'Neill. Never got a reply, so we had to close it out as information only. It looks like pretty sunset pictures based on the time. Well, yeah.
But you had one more for the temperature and stuff.
Oh, yeah. There's another picture of it.
Oh, weather, yeah.
Yeah, showing the weather. All right, Fred, you want to talk about this one?
Oh, yeah.
What's the cable?
Watch the cables. All right. Well, this case is kind of an interesting, God, it took me almost 90 days to complete this one because certain things happen, and then there's 2 witnesses. They were driving from Jordan Valley, Oregon, and these guys were gold prospectors, and they were out in Idaho looking around, and Rob was the individual that lives in Ohio. Trying to think of the name of it, but he's the one. He's even got a website for gold and prospecting and things of that nature. So he's really into it, and got a hold of Joe, who lives in New Hampshire. And Joe says, "Hey, you know," and Rob says, "Let's go out to Idaho. I want to do some prospecting out there and look around and see what they got for gold." And so Joe said, "Hey, I'm up for it." So he drives from New Hampshire all the way over to Ohio, picks him up at Ohio, and then they drive all the way out to Idaho and Jordan Valley, which is just across the border in Oregon. So I found out, and I kind of like figured out how much driving did Joe have to do. It's like 40 hours to drive from New Hampshire all the way out to Jordan Valley. So they came back, as you can see on this little map. There's Mitchell, Scotts Bluff, and things of that nature. They came down through. Let's look at another map. Oops. Here's one from Lexington to Greenwood, Nebraska. It's just outside of Lincoln. Greenwood is in Lexington, and then further up to the west, which I don't know if I have another. Oh, here's another one. Here's a little better one, where you see Lexington, Guttenberg, Maxwell, North Platte, and so forth, Ogallala, and it goes over to the Big Springs. And so here's they're driving back from Idaho. And so I asked Joe, I said, "What time was your incident?" He says, "Oh, about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning." Well, and then I found out, I just found this out a couple of days ago. He says, "Were you looking at your phone for time, or were you looking at," he says, "Well, no, I have an analog clock." I said, "Well, when you're in Jordan Valley, that's Pacific time. And so if you were there and didn't change your watch back, you know, and he's looking at his watch to see what time it was when he had the incident, he said 2:30. I said, well, thank God that we have his little pictures that he got from the various Visa card purchases and so forth. So we got timestamps, and the one on July 18th. So this happened on July 18th. And as you see, at July 18th at 3:23 a.m., they got gas in Lexington, Nebraska. So we got a good timestamp there going, right? So then Joe's kind of like rattling Rob, going, hey, wake up. This is like 3 o'clock in the morning. I've been driving since Idaho. He's already driven over almost 16 hours. He's like, you know, I'm done driving. He can't wake up. He can't wake up Rob to drive. So he goes, okay, I'll just continue on driving. And then he said, oh, all of a sudden he said, they're driving east. He sees this bright light behind him. He's thinking it's an 18-wheeler coming up on him, you know. But he says, I'm driving 85 miles an hour. I'm like, how's a semi truck coming up on you doing 85 miles an hour? He said, I don't know. I just thought it was a bright light. I thought it was a semi truck. Well, this light comes up behind him, and all of a sudden, here's this orb that's right beside him on the window side of the driver. And he's looking over 5 feet out. Here's this orb about the size of a softball. And so he says, oh, but then this orb shoots down into the medium between the east and westbound. But he didn't tell me until later, after my first interview. He says, oh yeah, Fred, I remember another part of it. Because he says, all from the time from Lexington to Greenwood, he said, I don't remember much, which again kind of dictates to me, like, did something happen? Did something happen between Lexington and Greenwood? Because he said, I don't really remember even driving that part of the thing. So then all of a sudden he said, here's his light. It goes down, it's like 5 feet away from him, from the car, but it stays about 4 or 5 feet up above the ground at all time. And he goes down, and then he says, oh yeah, then I remember. He writes me back after several days, and he says, there was another light that joined it, and it swirled, and they twirled, and, you know, kind of played around with each other, you know, and then it would come back, and it'd be close up to the side of the car where Joe's driving. And he says, well, then I slowed down to see if it would speed up. Well, the light stayed with him. He's, you know, and then he'd speed up, and then the light would match and pace him as he's driving. So he's going, this thing has some sort of intelligence control, because it's following, matching, and pacing me, you know, but then go down into the medium, and he stays down there. But at one time he said there's another light that swirled and intertwined, and they were just kind of flying along. And then this happened for about 5 minutes, and then eventually the light comes back, and then it just goes back behind him. He said he had about a 15-minute duration with this light, and then this other light. So now, as you can see, they drive from Lexington, and there's Kearney. He thinks that his event happened right around Kearney. And I found out there was another case that I had, that there was a couple, a father and their daughter was driving to Denver, and they came out, and they were just driving past Kearney. And guess what? They had another orb. They had these orbs of light that came in, you know, and one came up around back to the car, and then one of the light went through the car on the back seat of the car. So and then it popped back out, and it flew back behind them, just like Joe's did. And then when I had the father and the daughter together in the interview, and happened to just have them together, the daughter goes, well, the father thought the daughter was sleeping. Will says, well, I was kind of awake, but I knew what was going on. And so he told the story about how this light went through the back side of the car, and it lit up like a 100-watt light bulb going through the car. And the daughter goes, oh no, that's not what happened. He said the light came up from the front and came through the windshield and lodged itself in the console between the two of them. So I hear you got two witnesses now with two different stories, what transpired with this orb. And this happens to be around, guess what? Kearney, Nebraska. So that's another one I just had. So Joe goes driving and he said, somewhere along this line, he said, I think it's there in Greenwood that they switched drivers. He said it was close to the Iowa border, but he being up from New Hampshire, he really doesn't know, but he does remember being in Lexington and shaking this guy because he was pissed, like, Joe, wake up, or Rob, wake up. I said, I need you to drive, and Rob doesn't wake up. He's like shaking him. So this is at 2:23 a.m. So he continues to drive, and Kearney's about 40 miles or 40-minute drive down the road. And so we're thinking, so now I'm thinking 3:25, 40 minutes later. So we're talking maybe around 4 o'clock-ish now. And so they go and he drives and he has his experience. And the funny thing about Joe is, I'll read a little bit about Joe. Joe is he says he is a graduate from Lincoln Woodstock High School, and then in 1983 there in New Hampshire, and then enlisted in the Air Force. He says he spent 4 years in the Air Force working in the mechanical maintenance of the B-52 and the KC-135 aircrafts. He says after getting out of the Air Force in 1987, he became certified in welding through the Lincoln Electric Welding Technology and Training Center out of Euclid, Ohio. But then Joe suffered from an electrical shock injury where he got electrocuted. And in 1991, while welding there, he felt he had a near-death experience. So again, here we got another person who has a near-death experience. And as Mindy Toffes did a study on near-death experiencers who have had ET contact, and 50% of those people who have near-death experiences had ET contact versus maybe 5% of the population have had ET contact. But go figure, you got a near-death experiencer and 50% of those people are having ET contact. So that's another one of those stats. So then Rob is graduated out of high school from Wayne Trace High School there in Babylon, Ohio in 1996. And he said he took on various pizza jobs after out of high school, then studied at Brown Mackey College at Fort Wayne, Indiana, became a certified personal trainer in 2011 and worked at Anytime Fitness. He said the former owner of McGuire's PC Solutions there in Scott, Ohio, and then in 21 to present, or 2015, works at Learn to Grow a Straw Bale Garden. He works independently and has a strong interest in gold ventures and mining. So, but then Joe tells me too, he says, oh yeah, back in high school days, I did a lot of hallucinogenics. I was like, oh, so a little DMT going on here, doing the mushrooms, doing the DMT and things of that nature. So he is another prime candidate of lowering the veil, so to speak. So here's these two guys are driving along, and then eventually over in Greenwood, as you can, which is right, as you can see in the map right there, it's just outside of Lincoln on the east side. And this is what's kind of confusing, because Joe says it was still dark out when I was driving. And I'm like, okay, well, I found out from the ticket that at 6:21 a.m., that's when they got the gas. Well, at 6:11 a.m. there at Lincoln is sunrise. And there could have been, I found it was kind of cloudy and hazy and possibly even raining. So it could have been rain dark, but Joe contends that Joe's experience happened around after it over in Iowa, or they changed drivers over in that area. So I don't want to get it all confused, but the issue is that now Joe talks with me and he said, well, tell me your experience. He says, after I got driving, he said that So he's driving from Greenwood up through Omaha, and or possibly even prior to that time, I don't know. That's a given. I don't know where exactly Joe had experiences it, but he says he's been driving around a curve, and he looks up and he sees this really bright light up by this farmhouse. It's quite a ways away in the distance, and he said, I watched this bright light that was stationary for about 3 to 5 minutes. And as he got close to the light come zipping down to their truck. And once again, he's driving and he's looking out the passenger door window, and here's this, he called it a size of a basketball, but the center core was the size of a softball and was like 4 times brighter, very much brighter than the exterior of the light orb that was it. And of course, it matched him, and it drove along with him for another couple of minutes. But then he said, but this light's outside. And he said, we were coming up to an exit, and there was this exit sign, and this light goes, this light's going to hit the sign. Well, what's it do? The light goes whoop right over the top of it and just keeps on going. And then it disappears out of sight. So that's Joe's experience. And so here you got 2 guys, and Joe doesn't remember, or Rob doesn't remember Joe's experience, and Joe doesn't remember Rob's experience, because when they switched drivers, Rob said Joe fell asleep just like that. He was out like a flash. So those are the 2 scenarios. We got 2 people with independent sightings, and I kind of go with the feeling that you're supposed to have your own experience, and the other person won't sabotage the other person's like, what are you doing? What are you saying? You know, this the sabotage. They're strictly focused in on their own experience, which I find is one of the scenarios I find very plausible. So my analysis is, I said this is rather interesting case, having the 2 witnesses having their own independent sighting when they were actually driving and starting in Idaho down through Nebraska during the early morning hours from 2 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. And I did have another gas receipt from Greenwood to overpass east of Des Moines in a little town called Colfax, Iowa. And it's like 190 miles from Lexington to Greenwood, about 190 miles, and another 90 miles from Greenwood to Colfax. And it's almost the same type of drive. It's like a 3-hour drive. So they were getting gas about every 3 hours. So, and again, it was a good in receiving the timestamps, and when they stopped at the various gas stations there at Lexington, Greenwood, and Colfax, Iowa, we offering the same mileage, 190 miles, and drive time of 3 hours. So, you know, I kind of threw the idea out that Joe was driving really super fast, and he said, well, where's the missing time at? Well, I didn't think there was any missing time per se, because the drive times were pretty much the same. But like those of of any sort of abduction, it can happen instantaneous, and the time is always consistent. I will say, though, I asked Rob or Joe, I said, when you got back home, I said, did you have any dreams afterwards, after this excruciating period and the various orbs? Says, Fred, I did have a dream. And the dream was, he said, in the dream, he said, I'm driving. And again, it was very similar. The light came up alongside me, and then all of a sudden it switched, and the light was way up in front of me. And I said, what did you do then when the light was up in front of you? And he says, it was really super bright, like really bright. And I said, what did you do? And he said, I kept driving. And what happened? He said, I drove into the light. And then he said, what happened after that? Nothing. He said, I woke up. So me being the ERT and the experiencer, that's kind of like, looking at Teresa, she's looking like, yeah. So when you're in a dream, a lot of times the dreams are kind of foretelling of what you missed consciously, of what really transpired. I think this is another part of their experience, that Joe continued to drive, and actually that happened. There was a light in front of him. He drove into the light, and he lose consciousness. So to me, he had possibly a potential abduction at that time. And this kind of correlates where Rob is totally out. He's like locked up till and Joe says, I'm so pissed at him. I said, I was shaking him and I couldn't wake up the dude, you know? And so that was right. That was in Lexington. And so then he has his experience. So the ET says, we got this all planned out. So, you know, Rob's not going to wake up. So you need to drive. And then he has this dream once he gets back home of driving into the light and then losing consciousness, just like me in my little blue vortex and going up through the ceiling and all my other time. Maybe Teresa understands that as soon as you leave, go up through the house or go through a portal that you lose consciousness. So again, that's one of those scenarios. So then, continuing on with my analysis, that, let's see, where am I at? Okay. I said I found that since there was such confusion when the two guys actually switched drivers, does that offer that would be another aspect of this case, and with my own personal ET encounters such as that ended Joe's dream, I found there was a possible abduction. Joe talked about at the time of this incident of the light taking place around 2:30, which again, I think it was a different time. Both guys talked about their incident of the light object. And in fact, both of them think that they were under intelligent control. So there again. Again, the object matching and pacing when Joe was driving, that's another one of those scenarios. And eventually, I find that both the guys were of higher spiritual nature in their own life, and Joe with his MDE and Rob stating that he had his experiences with his LSD and his hallucinogenics as a kid. So therefore, both these guys have the ability of having disassociative behavior, you know, being able to cross the veil very much easily in an altered states of consciousness. When observing things in the quantum fields, it's very easy to do so. For the reason for their own independent sightings and the interference of the other may have sabotaged their own sighting when driving consciously. So the end result is, as you can see, of the driving time and all the craziness there, comes down to that I feel that the light object, since it was not a structured vehicle by which MUFON wants to identify craft, that this is what I would term as the case disposition as, oh, wait a minute, of unknown other. Unknown other represents other orbs and other things of that nature. So any questions? I don't think I'd ask Rob and Joe to sign on, but I don't think they're online. So
Was there any missing time?
I don't think there was. Again, the experiences, ET experiences can happen instantaneous without any time deviation.
Mm-hmm. Who are we looking for again? Rob and
Can you chat? Can you look at the chat thing to see if Rob's there or chat? There it is. You can chat. Can you scroll down?
No.
Okay. Anyway. So that is any other questions about this? I thought it was rather an amazing case with the orbs. Both guys had their little sightings, that the orbs were under intelligent control. I like that idea that Joe was a match and pace and slowing down of that scenario, and that I had a previous case around the same area where they had another orb sighting and the orb going across through the car, and both of the witnesses had different stories of what transpired. Again, when you're dealing with abductions and things of that nature, stranger things than this does happen. So here you got two people in the same car within 3 feet of each other having a different story of the light object. In this case, they were independent. One was falling asleep, totally out of it. And that's kind of like a lot of times my abduction, my wife was taken from my room, you know, and she went into the other room to have her healing done because I wasn't getting a part of it. And when I woke up, when my wife was screaming, Fred, 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 I found myself in paralysis. I couldn't get into the other room anyway until the abduction was over with. And then I felt like a switch just got thrown and I was able to move after that.
Like Jim's got a question.
Jim. So what's this?
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, go for the question.
What's your question, Jim?
Fred, did most of this occur east of Kearney, Nebraska?
In and around Kearney, I think. I don't know exactly where the first one happened. The first one happened in and around Kearney, and I think he drove all the way over close to Glenwood, and where they switched drivers. So the other one happened maybe around the Lincoln area to the Omaha area.
Okay, thank you, Fred.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, so you mentioned that like that one of them had sabotaged the other one's sort of experience. I'm not familiar with that. Could you talk about that?
Well, a lot of times, you know, when you have an ET experience, you don't want another person to sabotage it. And that's why these people are totally asleep, because, you know, you don't want to get involved. And a lot of time, like in case, if another person is there, they usually are put in paralysis. So you can't dicker with them, you know, even the dogs. You can have dogs and animals. Well, dogs will just like lay down and go to sleep and things of that nature, so that they're out of the picture, so to speak. So, but I thought it was really kind of one of those fascinating cases, and then it took me a long time to figure out all the different permeations between the two, you know, and well, it just so happens that Joe's father passed away soon after. I mean, just, you know, during the time that I was interviewing him. So that might have been one of those crazy things like tap, 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 you know, that we want to let you know. Then, and Joe got sick, or his father was sick and went to the hospital. So there was, both had personal issues going on at that time. So another one of those strange, coincidental, synchronistic type scenarios when you're dealing with this craziness of ETs and so forth. Yes.
I love it that you always ask when you're doing your interviews, and maybe this is MUFON directed, that you always ask, did you have any dreams following the incident? Because just in general, I want to know, or I'm curious as to what anybody's thoughts are regarding dreams about UFOs. There's been, you know, 8-9 times in the past 7 years of my life where, and I've had no weird incidents in the past 7 years, but I'll have these really, really incredible dreams about, and they're very explicit.
Right.
And I'm in Omaha where I live, and I'm seeing craft all over the skies.
Right.
Really incredible craft. And I'm just interested in what your thoughts are about any of that. Is that simply a dream, or could there maybe be more to that?
Oh, there's definitely more to it, as you know, Tanya, that I had a dream too, where I saw craft come across, you know, and stop. And this is where the start of my blue vortex is at. So here all these craft come over, and I'm looking down into the valley, and I saw all these little villages down below. They were lit up and with from the lights I could see it was dark. And all these craft came over, motherships, scout ships, every type of triangular ship. They all came over the tops of these villages. They stopped. And all of a sudden I'm looking, and all of a sudden these blue beams start coming down out of the craft, you know? And all of a sudden I'm seeing people being levitated up into the craft. I'm like, look, you know, people are being abducted. People are being levitated up in the craft. Well, in the dream, guess what happens to me? The blue beam comes over me, and I feel the levitation and taking place. Well, 3 months later, I had the actual experience. So it could be a premonition, it could be something that you've already experienced and it's surfacing through a dream, in which case, for Joe, he had that dream soon after he got home and crashed. And how does he remember this dream? Because it took him right back to the scenario, the situation of the light beside the car, but then it was in front of him, and he goes into the light, you know, which we could say is a portal of some sort, goes into the portal, and then he wakes up out of the dream. Which case, again, when people don't add two and two and are not into the UFO phenomena or the abduction scenario, they just think it's a dream, like, that's all it is. I said, for me, I know it's a big marker. Abduction, abduction, abduction. So I find that very fascinating.
Well, not necessarily out of the blue, like if you have a dream such as the ones I'm mentioning out of the blue, not after an incident, post-incident.
Right.
Very understandable. But when they are seemingly out of the blue, you know.
I just told you mine. I was coming from a spiritual point. I said, what do aliens have to do with me? Nothing. I didn't care about anything. All of a sudden I have this dream of craft coming in.
So that was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was back in the 90s. Yeah. So that's what's the start of my encounters and the start of unfolding all the abduction scenarios that I had was the start of that one particular dream, like, and then being levitated up, you know, and things like that. So I've had multiple experiences of the blue beam coming down and taking me up through the ceiling. And once I go through the ceiling, guess what happens?
You don't
I
remember.
lose consciousness. Yes. And Russ is going to be talking about that more about his understanding, maybe using some sort of anesthetize you into a state of awareness where maybe they can recall alien abduction memories of some sort. But this too is like you can have dreams and things of that nature, which the subconscious. And I would have to say, even your higher self directs these dreams to you to have these experiences and to awaken, you know. So I was to awaken to my abductions and so forth, and Dr. Casher, and thanks to him, and bringing Christy Peterson, and Christy is saying, I'm having these experiences, and Dr. Casher goes, oh, we have a support group here in Omaha. Would you like to join that? So Christy then became more aware of her experiences. So one thing leads to another with all of this stuff. So it's all integrating. So I think John Barta, I had him on one of my cases, and he goes, Fred, I said, you go right down the rabbit hole on each of these cases. You don't just keep it on the surface. You start asking about the dreams. Have you had sleep paralysis? Have you had this? And then like, well, of course I'm going to ask them, you know. And then all of a sudden these guys go, yeah, when I was a kid, my dad was driving, and he points out and says, look, son, that's a UFO. You know, and like, you don't get those stories unless you ask the questions. You don't get, so you have to be pretty good. Yes, you do have to be more of a, get to know the person, just like Joe was electrocuted, you know. And then here I'm talking to Rob, and he says, oh yeah, I've done a lot of psychedelics, which again opens up the field of the quantum and things of that nature. So, and there's Jeff back there laughing at me. He goes, yep. So I thought it was an excellent case as a multi-dimensional possibilities and things of that nature. So I had a lot of fun with this one. So I think Rob and Joe both had learned a lot about themselves through my experience. So I had a lot of fun with this case. So there you go. Any other questions? I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
All right. See what we got going here. Oops, where's the?
You have to click it sometimes. It'll, yeah. You
Oh, right. That's just- Oops. Trying to get that down to.
yeah, we'll switch it over to him anyway.
Okay.
So
All right, this next case is Dave Kreider's. And
Yeah. Yeah, it's West Des Moines on October 22nd at about 7:46 p.m. A West Des Moines, Iowa witness observed approximately 20 spherical blue-green lights or objects in the sky at about 70 degrees altitude. He did take a video of the sky, but the objects were too faint to be recorded on his cell phone camera. I was going to do a rapid close on this case because I immediately suspected that they were Starlink satellites, but there were a few things that didn't quite add up. First, when I looked at the weather information for that location, time, and date, it was mostly cloudy. And second, he believed that the objects were only 500 feet in distance. So I started to wonder, did he see something below the cloud ceiling? In an interview with him, a phone interview, I asked him about these issues. And as for the weather, he said that it was cloudy most of the day, but the clouds broke up around the time of his sighting. And then when I pressed him about how he was able to judge the distance, he said that he wasn't at all sure about the distance of the objects. And when he was filling out his CMS report, he just checked the 500 distance box, without really thinking about it. So, checking with the Heavens Above website, I found that there was a Falcon launch that deployed over 20 satellites, just a few hours previous to that. And they were visible in the south-southwest, and they reached an altitude of about 70 degrees at 7:46 local time, the exact time that of his sighting. So at that point, there was no doubt that he saw Starlink satellites. So I closed it as a IFO, man-made objects. And that was the only case I had this month, or since the last meeting, I should say. Any questions on that?
No. We had quite a few cases last meeting, and this meeting not so many, but
I made up for it.
yeah.
Gotta talk a lot about it. Yeah.
This next slide here was something that was sent to me by Phoenix MUFON. It was a kind of shows blur foes. Kind of shows how certain objects like birds and bugs at close distance to the out of focus, the lens are all out of focus, and then as you increase the distance with the depth of field, they come into focus. I thought this was kind of an interesting slide. We do get a lot of pictures with bugs and birds that people take. Yeah, so.
They used to call them silver bugs
Yeah,
back in the 50s. They were called silver bugs, remember?
silver bugs. All right. And Russ is going to talk to us about
all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
We love it.
Yeah, I love having presenters come.
I'm not really much of a public speaker, so I prepared it in written form.
We're not much. Of
So bear with me as I sound like Johnny Carson with his floppy hat. I'm doing a speech.
No, you'll be good.
I gotta just be slow and careful with
No,
what I
no
say.
coffee.
So, that's-
All right, well, yeah, we'll
two slides, that one and the other one.
yeah, and go ahead and introduce yourself, background, and then go ahead and start, and we're good to go.
all right.
Don't
This,
get quiet on us.
this borders on the realm of sensationalism. I understood that for a long time, so I've avoided mentioning it because it's been with me for many, many decades. But recently, a lot of developments have happened. I said, you know what? Maybe this is time to just bare my soul. So if you'll forgive me, I'll try to enunciate all my words because some of this stuff is a little out there. But I think it's time I mention it. My name is Russ Chadwell. 1983, I served in the Air Force at the 519th Bombardment Wing in New Hampshire. Later, I transferred to the Army National Guard in Nebraska, my home state. During the Iraq War, I was a medic serving at the Brooke Army Medical Center in Texas. What you're about to hear is hard to accept. It might be explained as imagination or hypnagogia. That's the mind going to sleep. I won't challenge your disbelief. In fact, I expect it.
But please hold all questions or remarks until the end. When I was 5, I saw my father standing silently before something changing shape, taking form. I'd been drawn to the living room where I stumbled upon the scene. My father's face seemed sedate and groggy. He nodded from time to time. The thing faced away from me towards my father when it suddenly appeared fur-covered. I don't remember what happened after that. My life went on, of course. I never forgot that scene, but it didn't consume me. I let it go. My father remained completely unaware of that encounter. Then, when I was 26, I experienced a series of unusual dreams. If I wasn't being stung by a swarm, I was drifting through doorways. I saw a sailing ship, its long keel stuck in the ground, standing over a story tall. When I awoke, there were alien forms nearby, standing in dim blue light. I struggled but couldn't move. Raising a hand, gesturing for me to relax, the beings finally left into the darkness. Later that year, on my way to California, I saw a distant light just above the horizon. This was New Mexico, Highway 40 at night. For a long time, the light traced out a tiny figure 8 over and over again rapidly. When do memories form? Why do memories form? What state of consciousness is required to think? Science has answers for these, but are they solid answers? Why do recovered coma patients sometimes insist they were aware of things and can prove it? I can tell you that during general anesthesia, you must be intubated. A machine must take over your breathing or you will die. For sedation less deep, you are at risk of forming memories, being aware. Your surroundings remain partially within grasp. General anesthesia is a kind of coma. Coma is considered beyond awareness. Could memory be at work anyway when indicators say otherwise? The way I got the following is hard to explain. I felt no epiphany or spark of imagination when it came. I've experienced that sort of spark before. I know epiphanies well. It felt more like I overheard it, but no one spoke to me. I heard no voices. It could be a mistake that I got this information, or it's just imaginary. You might suspect I heard or read about it from Hollywood somehow. Go ahead and feel that way, but hear me out. Others recall details of abductions, parts of abductions anyway. Others claim to have come away with unique insights. Were those insights supposed to have been remembered? I think in these cases, ideas form for other reasons than imagination. You may disagree, that's fine. I believe in the ring of truth, however. Consider the following a hypothesis at the very least. One I can suggest a test for. The recent courage of Ryan Graves has brought me here to describe what I know. We are in a parasitic relationship with an ancient species. These extraterrestrials find themselves at an evolutionary end. Evolution is your friend until you get past 3 million years or so. Space travel and the radioactivity involved has also affected them. There are similar genetics throughout the galaxy due to basic physics. On Earth, for instance, all life shares an underlying genetic code. These beings correct their condition with the genome of others somehow. They prefer bits of natural genes over those that could be engineered, let's say. Apparently, a natural spring is preferable to anything artificially filtered. A pure, uncontaminated source is apparently what they are after. And they obtain that best from advanced pre-spacefaring populations. Once an entire population becomes engrossed in various forms of increased background radiation, they move on, generally. With regard to genome parasites, Jill Banfield, UC Berkeley, found microbes here on Earth doing something similar. As she stated October 2022 about her discovery, imagine a strange foreign entity that assimilates and shares important genes. Do we really know how we'd choose to protect against the ravages of time and space? They are older than us, more advanced than us, but we are not like ants to them. Originally, long, long ago, they did not warp space when traveling. Near light speed travel causes time dilation. Their original homeworld is no longer the same as a result. The first visits to Earth started some 7 to 8 million years ago. They push our timeline ahead using time dilation as they travel. Whenever they return, we are thousands of years further along while they have aged very little. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And like magic, they have seen each and every hominid who has ever existed. They track each individual looking for signs of something, possibly individual mutation, a marker of some sort. How do they do this? All I know is that it is simple for them. By overlapping time dilation, space-time warping, something similar, they check our evolutionary state, individual by individual, constantly. They render a person semi-unconscious in order to extract the desired materials. There is no perception or recollection of the encounter, usually. I don't think recollection is supposed to happen. Perhaps they don't use a strong anesthesia requiring intubation. They're in a constant search for new homeworlds as well. As we are Earth's last hominid, they expect we will go extinct like all the others. They'd prefer we not destroy the Earth or pollute it with radiation along the way. They stand to inherit the Earth if conditions permit. To appreciate what's involved here, I invite you to consider the following. Open knowledge of them may negatively alter our evolutionary pressure. It's the greyhound mustn't catch the electric rabbit premise. Once the greyhound catches the rabbit, he loses interest in the race. He can't unlearn. It permanently changes his motivations. Historically, it risked a kind of dementia for us. For early peoples, beliefs would have been challenged and changed. For the period before science, wars could have broken out. Open knowledge of them also risks turning into fear and suspicion. Thus, they have preferred to remain completely unknown. But mistakes have happened, crashes and other unwanted evidence has occurred. So it's they who demand governments deny and cover up evidence. It's not future shock governments are really concerned with. They keep governments in line with demonstrations of their capacity or deal-making. Governments will not admit to anything. Our government is, in a sense, under their control. They distort clear visibility of themselves or change their appearance. They complicate perceptions when possible, move inexplicably where possible, all in an effort to degrade credible accounts of them. Once they created space-time warping for themselves, they could influence a surprising range of objects through artificial gravity. On this side of the Kuiper Belt, there are several fairly large, icy, rocky planetoids. One plan calls for slowly pulling them together over time. Something very odd happens once they begin to interact. The idea seems hazardous to me. It's wildly complex, seems implausible, but it's fun to watch. I think I know the bodies involved, but I'm not sure. It's possibly Pluto, Charon, Eris, Haumea, and their satellites. Apparently, any abrupt course corrections required would be handled by the artificial gravity created through space-time warping. Protecting fragile bodies like Pluto during extreme maneuvers would apparently be achieved using partial warp bubbles. Where the inclined plane of Pluto's orbit meets the rest of the solar system, the interactions of these bodies becomes very wild. Several of the objects get cast deeper into the Kuiper belt, while Pluto gets kicked backwards slightly, now on the same plane as the rest of the planets, but falling against their flow of the solar system. Pluto ultimately falls against the orbit of Jupiter twice, slowing each time. Nearly orbiting Jupiter on its final pass, Pluto turns about yet again, this time falling towards Venus, ending up chasing Venus from behind. Pluto ultimately collides with Venus rather catastrophically, ultimately providing a moon, an ocean, and other planetary dynamics needed for the new world formed Venuscopia. Time dilation would then be used to speed up Venuscopia's development. We would benefit directly from such time dilation if things were different. Many advancements are possible if we weren't trapped inside their secret scheme. We should decide if we want to rescind this current relationship, transcend it, becoming more equal with them. If we take a stand, maybe they'd see us differently. This would involve preventing the semi-unconscious state they inflict. Understanding how states of perception are controlled is key. Slowing the link between the thalamus and frontal cortex is how general anesthesia works. Though this can be achieved electrochemically, it might be achieved other ways too. The cornerstone of general anesthesia is that it is a reversible coma. The reversing method might be used to prevent the unconsciousness involved here. For safety, only medical professionals should attempt to find a specific process, though. This could be done using traditional chemicals or by finding other means. Once we have clarity on demand for all occasions, the control by sedation stops. Once the so-called tranquilizer gun no longer works for them, things should change. They can look elsewhere for their needs. It's no harm to them. We either get a respectful relationship finally, or they leave, or perhaps our efforts don't work at all, but we should try. One way to determine if any of this is necessary is by carefully looking inside ourselves. Science needs to find ways to unlock suppressed memories made during unconsciousness. That's really what I'm after here. That and the expanded coma reversing method. For instance, discover how some intubated coma patients know things that they shouldn't. Experiments could start by using general anesthesia, stimulus testing, followed by hypnosis, exploring and unlocking hidden memories. Methods beyond hypnosis could be used too, something akin to Neuralink possibly, functional MRIs and AI algorithms, other things not yet considered. A person dreams all night long but remembers almost nothing the next day. A memory extraction process would start to become successful if it could change that. Improved unconscious memory recall methods must be sought and discovered by peer-reviewed science and nothing less. Once a means allowing suppressed memories to surface is created, we can finally see and know the beings we are dealing with. If we've all been secretly visited, extracting suppressed memories is the first step. If we each find memory of our own alien experience, then we must face it. Fear of those things suppressed might deter some from taking the journey. As more choose to face it, though, the journey becomes less and less worrisome. We could find strength together. Once we know the truth, defining our relationship begins. Whether that's stopping the parasitic arrangement or openly accepting them as symbionts. I'm open for questions. Thank you very much. I was just trying to make sure I enunciated. I wasn't trying to be angry like that. I just, when I read this over myself, I kept getting my tongue tied and I couldn't hear. I played it back and I was like, what did I just say there?
Yeah. Did you say this all came to you in a download?
Right.
Oh,
I
download.
can explain that process, what it seems like to me. This is the diagram of what I think needs to be tested. This right here will probably tell right away if I'm onto something or if I'm Looney Tunes. But anyway, onto your question. When there is an epiphany, somebody's come up with something. Like for instance, if I were to ask you to picture a shape in your mind, right now you're working on it. Just as soon as I said it, whether you know it or not, you're working on it. You're picking shapes in your mind right now. That process, once you lock in on a shape, you've created an epiphany for yourself. You've created something in your mind. However, if I could get a dry, can I use this dry board here?
Oh, yeah.
Or over there, or is there some? This is you providing information for me as if I were to say to you, think of a shape, whether it's a square, a triangle, a star, whatever. The minute I say think of a shape, you're thinking of one. You're having an epiphany. As soon as it happens, boom, you can tell you came up with that. You've made the choice. On the other hand, if something is on a download to you, if it's firing off as a fire hose of information to you, like an instructor for giving a course, it's not really an epiphany. You might have an aha moment. You get it. You understand what's being told you, but you didn't come up with it. Somebody told it to you. There is a difference.
Oh, yeah.
So the two models I want to discuss here is if you're coming up with something or if I'm giving you something. That's really where you have to tell the difference of if it's a download or not. And this is why I'm finally deciding that it was a download, because I don't feel that I thought of it.
That's what I thought.
Okay, so if I am downloading to you all right now, do I need this forward?
Yeah, you could.
Oh, you got it.
All figuring stuff out is what we're doing.
So you've already been thinking of shapes in your mind. If you were thinking of a shape and I asked you to pick one and you tell me, that you would be experiencing what I call an epiphany. You came up with it. Now, this is the reverse. This is what gives you the impression this is a fire hose of information coming to you. Now I want you to tell me what I'm doing up here, one step at a time. It's kind of a limit process. Is everybody familiar with what a limit process is?
Yeah.
There is an answer, and you're going to approach the answer slowly but surely, and you can tell what that answer is, but no one told you what the answer is, but you're figuring it out because the information is coming to you a bit at a time. So this is the limit process here. Now, you told me a shape, you didn't really, but I asked you to pick one, and then you told it to me. That's you coming up with it. Now, here's me giving something to you. What is this? First thing you're going to say is it's a line, but I'm not done yet. So right now you're working on it. You don't know what it is. Somebody's giving it to you. But it says, now I'm going to do this, and I'm asking you again, what is it? It's a limit process. You don't have enough information yet. It's being fed to you, but you don't know what you're trying to figure out what the heck it is that's going on. But it's coming to you. You're not coming up with it. I'm giving it to you. This is how it feels. I'm trying to give you the feeling of what a fire hose of information feels like in slow motion. Now, what is it? Anybody?
A star.
Bingo. It is a star. I was going to do the star, but no one told her. She had to figure it out from my information. It's similar to this epiphany process where I asked you to pick a shape, but she didn't come up with it. She figured it out through a limit process, limiting information coming to her a bit at a time. This is what it feels like. And this is how you can tell that you didn't come up with it. But when you try to tell someone your story, they're like, dude, it's just your imagination. You're a really imaginative fellow. You came up with it, but you can feel that there was a difference.
Well, the feeling comes in with holographic construct. You can see a part of it and the whole thing, like
Yes.
it's like a memory. You can have a memory of a dream, and a part of the dream's there. And if you focus on the little part of the dream, the whole dream unfolds instantaneously.
Yeah, it's really a fire hose of information, and it's not spoken word. It feels like spoken, like someone's telling you bits and pieces of something, and sometimes little bits of information that look like images, but it's a fire hose.
Yeah.
If you've ever been in an accelerated class in a course, in a curriculum, slow down, instructor, God, you're just like firing this information off. This stuff comes all at once, and now you piece it together, but no one told you, but you know what it is. You're certain of it, you know where it's going, so I know what it is. I saw the bits and pieces, I saw now look up there, I put up the maintenance, that's apparently not right. The two images I saw were planetoids that were of similar size. So Make's not the same size as Pluto. That would have been Pluto and Eris. That fits what I saw a lot better. But I had to piece it together now and draw what I saw from somebody having told me. Kind of follow what I'm
So
saying?
it was a download. To answer
Yes.
my question, it was a download.
It was a download, but it wasn't with spoken word, and it wasn't solely with images. It was a work of that you had to work it out, like someone, someone teaching you something
Like you're almost getting like clues or like
rapidly.
like feedback as to
And you know
direction.
what
that
the answer
thoughts-
is, just like in the limit process, I don't know how,
Yeah.
you can know the final result without getting it.
Yeah, because you're just ever closer approaching.
Ever closer, but this happens bam fast,
Yeah.
way too fast for a conversation,
Mhm.
And
way too
maybe-
fast for images even.
Maybe perhaps the reason you question, like, was this a dream or somebody you're telling this information? Because I have had downloads on multiple occasions. And I'm exhausted afterwards. It's all I can do is take a bath and go to bed. Like, I mean, I am, and then it's like the next day after I've had a night to sleep on it or whatever, but I know when a download happens.
Yeah, it feels
And-
different. It feels different if you were coming up with it. What is the point?
Yeah.
It
very
is something,
different,
it is
very
something so
different.
obviously different. And you hold on to the information because you know the minute you start moving your mouth to try to describe it to others, you're gonna say, I know what you're doing. You're telling me about a dream you had last night. No, it's different. It's just so alienly different when you're told this stuff this way. Is that, I'm trying to give you the sensation. I want not just a definition. I'm so tired of people saying, they telecommunicated. Telecommunicated is just a bunch of garbled, tones. It doesn't mean anything. You gotta have the feeling. Picture a shape. What shape are you picturing?
Triangle.
Triangle. So you had to communicate to me. That feels different than this process.
Right.
I took you through it, right? You feel it, right? That's important. I tell you, that's really important.
But was my guess of a star based on the only 3 lines you had drawn, or was it telepathic?
Right. Who knows?
I picked up multiple triangles.
That was going for 2 triangles, right?
It's even 7.
Well, That's even, that goes right into remote viewing. Remote viewing, you're not supposed to use your imagination, your visual, you're supposed to feel it before, you feel. You don't, and you use broad terms, you don't identify it, because as soon as you identify it, guess what? You go from a quantum into 3D when as soon as you start visualizing.
Oh, yeah, good point, Fred.
But unfortunately, it's not enough for current science to grab hold of.
Well, science is science. Science wants facts, figures, and identification
Repeatable.
in 3D reality. And if you're in the quantum, that ain't happening. I'm sorry, folks.
Okay, this real quickly, the whole point is, why are they doing this to Venus? What's it gonna do to Venus? My sensation, again, my download was that this is kind of plan B. If we screw up Earth, because people would say, well, you're talking about they're going to gift us Venus, they're going to be beautiful aliens and gift us. They're not, in my view, what I've seen, they're not gifting us anything. They're here because they visit all over the universe. And because space travel is hard, they need to correct their condition constantly. And that's how they found how to stay, I guess, youthful or stay on course or whatever. They just keep borrowing from existing beings that are not full of radiation. If we get the planet polluted pretty good, then they will probably, before they leave, hit Venus with something. So when they come back, there'll be another planet they can do something with. I don't think there'd be creatures on there when they come back. I don't know what would happen. But anyway, this is what I got. All the way out there at the Kuiper Belt, which is like 50 astronomical units away. It's way out there. It's halfway to a star or something, there's all these ice bodies out there, the rocky worlds. Well, they're gonna move them using this space-time warp. Well, if you warp space, you're creating gravity, you know? They've already got a mission that an astronaut from the Apollo program helped to develop, I think, where he was able to use a small spacecraft to attract something in space, or that was the idea anyway, that just the gravity between the two bodies, you could move the bigger body around using the smaller body. That's kind of like using space warping. You've got the gravity there already, pull something with it. So these beings, they can manipulate way more than anything natural. And they can get those guys lined up so they're working together. And they get into this really complicated dance. They're moving around. And one gets ejected, but it's not fast enough. You know, there's so many bodies moving around together with each other. They can't stay together as a unit. One of them gets ejected for some freaking reason. I don't really understand why, but they pull that one further backward so that it's finally falling out of its orbit. And it comes back here. Jupiter is just cooking along like it always does, this way, kind of clockwise, looking down from the top, whatever that is. And here comes this Pluto, passes by Jupiter. And when they pass each other going opposite directions, when Pluto hits Jupiter's gravity well, it reduces its speed some, but not enough. So now it's not going to make it all the way back out here to the Kuiper Belt because it got slowed down. So it starts to get marshaled. I guess I'll call it marshaled. These guys are following this thing, and they will marshal it, make sure it comes back around. When Jupiter, a few years later, is back over here, it comes cooking along again, past it again, and now it's so close that it takes another turn. And again, they're marshaling it the whole time with their space-time warping. Great use of this space-time warping. Besides getting somewhere, you can manipulate stuff, you know. And now it does this crazy dive toward Venus. Of course, Venus is cooking along here this way. Pluto comes up behind it and it collides with Venus. And once this rocky ice world hits Venus, it changes Venus. It starts to cause the planet to rotate somewhere. It doesn't really rotate that much now. It could be that there's too much interlocking between Venus and the sun to change too much. But this is what I saw. This is they do something to Venus. It's a plan. They haven't done it yet. Maybe they know it's not worth doing, or they would see how it goes with us. And if we destroy the planet with a nuclear war or just pollution or just foolishness, then they can say, okay, we can't use these folks anymore. Let's get our plan B going here. We'll leave. And when we come back later, there will at least be a fresh planet to use.
That would be a cataclysmic event throughout the our solar system, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if we start to see,
It may not even exist after that.
I guess you can use it as a sign of the times. If you see Pluto falling out of orbit, that must be we're doomed. I don't know.
Dr. Casher,
That's the end times.
what do you think of, I mean, what we've been told about the planet Venus is that the levels of, I'm not sure what chemical, it's absolutely inhabitable, the toxins, okay? Yet, Valiant Thor apparently came from Venus, if anybody is familiar or believes in that story. And he was very much humanoid, very much breathing our air without needing special equipment and living here on the planet in the 60s. And he was supposedly from Venus. So is it possible that we've just been lied to? I mean, what a shock, but about the atmosphere of Venus. I would like to hear what Dr. Cancer has.
I don't think so, no. I'm looking at all this, these people have to be pretty good at what they're doing. But, you know, I can see how they can do all these loops and end up at Venus. I don't know why. I think there are going to be serious problems. You raise a good one. The atmosphere is, I forget what it is. It may be sulfur dioxide, I'm not sure. but it's a
I don't
very,
recall either, but it's
Yeah.
highly toxic to
it
human
really
beings.
is. It's also about 900 degrees centigrade.
Well, that's what they told us, yeah.
Well, we sent stuff there to the land. They can measure it. So there's gonna be a lot of stuff that has to be done to make this habitable and to remain at that location without any temperature going up. Yeah, so they got a big scientific problem, but looks like they can do a lot of stuff, so maybe they can fix they have to have a lot of fixing to do if they're gonna make Venus habitable and remain habitable at that location. And I can see it, well, if we're gonna give them magic powers, I guess they can do that. But, I don't know why they would make it. I guess it's the closest one to substitute for the earth if we screw things up here. And then we live there, but, there's gonna be a lot that has to be done to leave it in that orbit without heating up too much. I mean, well, I think a whole
It's a
bunch of
lot
problems.
easier to
Yeah.
save this planet than it would be to terraform another planet. We will not be allowed to destroy this planet completely. Period.
Yeah, I mean, that's another issue, yeah. It's almost like,
Well, like you look at the moon, some people think it's a spacecraft been brought in and then put in the circular formation and.
some people may think that, yeah.
Yeah, I do.
There is history that shows there was a time when there was no moon, there was a moon, so
Right.
it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, it's talking about what's the timescale, I guess, of this consciousness that we're working with here.
Yeah, with,
Because if it is on the planetary sort of scale, where it is these, celestial bodies, then what could ordinarily appear to us as a natural event there could be a level of intention just at a higher sort of level playing out.
Sure.
well, if they could do all that, they could do practically anything for us.
Well, I'm curious if Pluto could perhaps, with its weirdness and then knocking Jupiter out of its traditional path, could it perhaps move Venus away from where it is, making it not 900 degrees or changing the atmospheric content?
Well, that's what I would do if I were, had these magic powers.
It's impossible.
Well, Jupiter is not, it's gonna continue in its orbit. Pluto's not big enough to mess that up, and it's just going around and getting a slingshot effect.
Oh, I see,
Twice.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Jupiter's gonna stay there. And then the slingshot effect is gonna bring Pluto back into Venus. And they're gonna fix
And then
Venus up.
could that knock Venus somewhere?
Well, if they do that, they can take Venus out to the Earth's orbit, and that would take care of the problem.
Right.
If that's what they wanna do, it's gonna take a lot for the Earth to be.
There was a lot of discussion about cloud cities and stuff in Venus, but it's too acid. I think if you took a big water-filled body like Pluto and slammed into Venus and caused who knows what that would do to the planet, it would do for restructuring the planet entirely, I guess. You might end up with a type of an atmosphere then that once you get underneath the clouds, it's not so acid filled or something like that. So maybe it would be a plan B to come back million years.
Well, but
later.
we'd have to solve the 900 degrees on the surface of the planet.
My point, it would have to be on the surface to go from cloud cities, but what's avoids the cloud cities right now is it's not secure. So it's some sort of acid.
Yeah,
mixed with the
right.
clouds. So the temperament's okay in the clouds, but the clouds are all wrong. What if Pluto has chemistry that once the thermal nature of two bodies like that colliding, goes away in a million years, you've got some kind of a cloud.
But Pluto can't solve the problem of where Venus is located from the sun unless it somehow knocks Venus out of its current location.
Well, if they're gonna bring Pluto and knock it all clear around and have to do all this stuff, I think it'd be pretty easy to move Venus out to the Earth's orbit.
Yeah.
We're really getting way out there now. Talking about some of this stuff.
Reel it back in,
yeah, I got a question for Russ. So this was part of the download you got. You saw this plan or
This is
something?
my putting together of what I saw, best as I could. I don't know the names of the bodies. I'm not sure if it was those three, like I said.
For Pluto, if I remember correct, I'm not an expert in all this stuff, but Pluto's not on the center, right? It's like kind of
Right.
off center for the, did you see that in the thing? Cause like when it would come in, it wouldn't be flat, right? Pluto would be like, coming down at an angle to hit Jupiter.
It's like a spiral.
Spiral, here's a planetary, and Pluto's doing one of these numbers.
Yeah, it's kind of
It's
off.
not that far out, but it is, and it's also elliptical, right?
Yeah.
So the first step, what I said was, you have to marshal those together, and once they, get to a point where they're in line with the rest of the solar system, that's when this sort of kickback happens, and it shoots it down into our neck of the woods, right there, right, you see that? Can I?
The first one? There it is, yeah.
There it is. Let me try.
Yeah, I just want to like bring that up. That's what I was thinking about, like how is this?
Let me try to.
Yeah, Maureen says, Velilovsky wrote about
Velkovsky.
disruptions in the planetary orbits.
Yeah.
I love manual stuff. I have all of
That image you just had there was perfect for me to, right there, yeah, that right there.
It's
Let me
us.
try to climb over this one.
That's
That was
it's another part of our consciousness. We try to project our consciousness onto another planet instead of just, what are we running from? That's the question.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Here, with your diagram, it's.
This is just one loop. Their problem is there are several of them and they're not neatly all on the same path. They're all over the place. They got, some of them are smaller, so it's quite a bit of a, but they're all in this crazy incline that you see here. So they finished marshaling them together or something similar, but when they're coming through here, right about right about here is where this kickback happens, and they kick it back down through this. So if you have these two planes, they're coming around here and they're trying to orbit each other, but when they get about here, Pluto gets kicked back right then on that plane, right, and follows the right plane.
Oh, okay.
So they're fighting with each other, doing whatever, and then Pluto goes, whoop, and it's not enough. I mean, there is a natural ejection when you've got that many bodies that you can see tumbling and fighting each other. One of them gets thrown off. But they have to marshal it. They have to get the rest of the speed off of this thing, because even though they're way out there, they're moving pretty fast still. So they use space-time warping to produce an artificial gravity, and they've got a lot of it available because they could shoot across the galaxy. But still, you're talking about moving something the size of a small planet, so it's a very slow motion fight.
But but when you say gravity, you're meaning they're a push, not a pull, which actually is anti-gravity, is it not?
Well, I don't know, when you have,
Well, you could pull it one way or you could push it, either.
it's kind of both. Gravity ends up being sort of a push and a pull. It's just space-time, you're just kind of getting swept. It's like as if this carpet was moving, I'd be riding with it, I'm getting pulled and pushed. The stuff in front of me is pulling me, and the stuff behind me is pushing me. So it's a whole different thing. We're so used to.
Well, I believe that.
So did you get a feeling that download, what year and time was this? Is this in the very far future, or?
All I know is it's a plan.
Yeah, it sounds like a plan.
And the impression I got, the process that I saw
Yeah.
was like, this is plan B for some reason, because it isn't a very good plan. Like you were saying, it's got some problems.
So yeah, this is like the 3 lines, and then we're trying to piece together what is the plan?
That's what I was doing when I
Yeah.
was getting these images and these ideas. The conversation, whatever it was, this idea isn't really complete, and it hasn't been executed. It would have been better done long, long ago if it was going to be done, a million years ago. But anyway,
Well, we knew something happened to the asteroid belt, something got hit.
well, that was one theory, but it turns out it's not really like that.
If they can warp space-time, they can do it, whatever they want in there. And it'd be pretty easy for them.
But that's not the impression I got. The impression I got is it's better to just marshal these things along rather than just say, sap these guys and throw right into Venus. They have to kind of work with it because these
They could do that, sure.
you know what I mean? This is
If- if
1,500
they have a
miles
reason to
across.
do that.
This Pluto is half the size of a moon, and it's
Yeah,
It's
Pluto's a
a
little bit
planet.
smaller.
Don't disqualify it as a planet.
Pluto's smaller than Venus, so it might be easier to do.
What if we did Mercury instead of Venus?
yeah.
It's really new.
And then the one other question, so like,
There's like Mercury has potential habitable zones within it, like in salt glaciers. So that was one of the things just over the last couple days. It's kind of been getting pieced together as far as astrobiology is concerned. There may be layers within these, salt formations where some amount of life could exist, water could be there. And so it could be a better target for injection of, Pluto so icy, of a lot more water to really turn Mercury into an ocean world. That could be a lot more set up for future development.
Water world.
I haven't really thought of it this way before, but maybe this is an idea that's not really even one they're even entertaining. It's one that they wonder if we might pick up. Maybe we would, because one of the things we've talked about is living in the clouds. Well, if the clouds are too acid, of course, you've got millions of years involved. Once you hit a planet like that with another planetoid, it's going to be 1,000,000 years plus before you get anything close to what Venus looks like now. I mean, maybe even longer than that. So I don't know what's going on, but this is the stuff that I saw. I don't know if you can do that backward backtracking thing or not.
Then my other question, like Pluto has like a moon next to it, right? Like the,
Sure.
yeah, sure.
And more than that, it has like a couple other little pieces of it too.
Yeah, but it's like basically, it's like the same size of Pluto, right? Like almost close.
Half the size, the insurance half the size of Pluto.
Yeah, they're pretty big. Anyways, they're pretty close to each other. Is that included in this? So like when they pull Pluto in with the other planet, there's like 2 planets?
It's not just 2 planets, because the idea that I saw was that you didn't want to just have Aries and Pluto, in a neutral orbit. That's not enough. You want to have a couple of more than them, so you get into this weird sort of fight.
Okay.
But the speeds aren't fast enough. That's the problem. Even though you can eject one, it's still going in this direction. So you have to slow it down and get it all to go this way. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
It's bizarre, but anyway, like we say, it's.
Thanks, Russ.
Yeah, thanks.
What's on the agenda, Greg?
All of a sudden, I think we need the Collision's a good book.
I don't have to say experiences from the 90s.
Yeah, Worlds and Collisions is the best book.
So it's been involved with
Oh, okay.
That's how it's done.
90s is well, Maxwell, are you doing both meetings or just a second? All right, I'll do a little section this time. Oh, yeah. I'm like.
We are not all physicists, believe me.
We are not. All right, so this was a little section I put together. I was going to do it last time, but we ran out of time, and we got some time this time. But I remember in the old meetings we were doing, we'd always go through like just some random UFO pictures and stuff in the news, and I kind of like that thing, even though some of them are kind of hokey and stuff like that. So I just decided I'd put some social media stuff together and kind of want to make it like a reoccurring thing. But I haven't updated this since last meeting, so some of this stuff's just kind of the old stuff in the news. This one here, we already covered this last meeting. Greg had it on there. So this one here, this is from Twitter or X. I don't know where to put the little thing on there. So I think the first one, it's in LA, and so I'm just basically going on Twitter, typing UFO and just looking at, what looks cool. So this was one that they found on Twitter, and I thought it looked pretty neat. It's kind of like a little spiral thing. And hopefully everybody, I think this should pop up on the Zoom. Send a message if it doesn't. Start playing this. So that would big screen.
Oh, you see this? Holy shit. The world.
Dude.
Oh, you see this? My internet is slowing down.
My internet's slowing down. That's the whole world slowing down. But yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. And then one of the comment replies was that somebody else saw this happen to a Class PGA golfer, Jimmy Walker, earlier this year, 4-second clip uploaded on his phone. And so this was another one, kind of the same thing. But this one's closer to the ground, I believe. Bring this one up. Wait, who saw? Oh, okay. Yes, I don't know. It doesn't really seem like a bug or anything. Okay, video looks good. All right. Anybody got any ideas?
Any debunking?
Who's our debunkers? Greg, what do you got?
Greg, the debunker?
No, not a bug, not a satellite, not a planet.
Drone's a new one, we call anything. Right?
Drone, yeah, maybe if it's a small drone, maybe.
I just thought of like a kite, you know, would be spun with a tail to it, you know?
But yeah, like way up in the sky and stuff.
A kite with a drone on it to light up like that? Can you see this?
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
There's something in the very first, and the tail is.
This one here would have to be slower because the other one was kind of near the ground going fast. This one's going kind of slow.
That's neat. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that one was kind of neat. I don't really know what it would be. Next. We're putting it as an unknown, I guess. This here is from what? Oh, this is from Greer. He was on X and he was talking about I can't remember. Something interesting. Yeah, why can't ETs be rescued by their own people? So I thought it'd be
I mean, not Kyle. Fred says he's a reptilian.
he looked kind of reptilian.
I know a lot of still.
Actually, partially Native American.
Multiple sources that there are captives of extraterrestrial origin in a couple facilities, apparently still living. Now, I haven't seen them. I'm dealing with people who have knowledge of this. And people often will ask, why don't the ETs come in and resolve that? Number one, if they were to take an action like that in a heavily fortified facility, it would look like an alien invasion. And if it looks like an alien invasion, the disinformation and PR machine around the whole cover-up would portray it that way. And that is the tripwire that ETs do not want to go through. Obviously, if we could figure this out, they have. So they have to be very careful in taking these sort of overt and aggressive actions, because if they take them, it will be used against them. As it is, there's a huge body of evidence of man-made fake abductions and injuries and what have you that have been laid at the feet of the ETs, which are false. Imagine if they actually did take an overt action like that. So I think we're dealing with a situation where humans, those of us who understand this, and that's everyone listening who are activists in this field, really need to take the action ourselves. The Congress does, the White House does, and I think ultimately law enforcement, because the people I'm meeting with now in Washington and who are in military, but also FBI circles, absolutely admit that these projects are being run criminally and that they're committing many, many major federal crimes.
A little clip from him. Another chat. How could a drone do that? Good question. All right, this is again on Twitter. This here was yeah, UFOs that were caught over Taiwan, apparently from a plane. Let's see if we got a video. And yeah, looking down here.
Thunderbird seagulls.
I've seen them appear and disappear.
Now, I mean, my question on something like this, are those points of light or is that one huge ship? With lights around it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, look at how it interacts with cloud. Right.
Yeah, one thing,
I don't see
they
that.
do seem like they're below the clouds because some would disappear.
It's over water or over land?
It says probably over water, I guess, if it's Taiwan. I mean, it looks kind of.
Taiwan's a large enough island, though. That I think if you're in a plane over the middle of Taiwan, it would look like land because that could be forest or that could be
Yeah, true.
water.
it's sunset, maybe those are just lights, as they get stronger and stronger as night progresses, you know? Cameras have that certain focus, that you're not really
But are we seeing a reflection of the cloud?
Yeah, but.
Yeah,
Off the cloud? I think they're below the clouds.
Seems like I'm seeing reflection.
So anyway, I thought that one was interesting.
Like, look at that down there, that looks like a reflection.
Yeah, I kind of thought it might be like a glass reflection, but yeah, if it disappears with the cloud, you can kind of rule that out. What's Greg say? Resident UFO expert.
Boats on the water. Yeah,
Oh, true.
they're flying over boats on the water.
And then they're all just kind of shining up. Boats on the water is what he said. If
Yeah.
people in here. Yeah, or Photoshop. I mean, a lot of these, since they're just random things on the internet, we don't have a lot of information on, when it was taken, aircraft or sea vessels or where it was at, if that's water, if that's land. So, but hey, it looks cool.
Getting the juicy stuff, without the story, you can't.
Yeah.
Hard to piece together anything useful.
That would have been easily, detected if it's aircraft, if they done it real time. There are multiple, airline traffic, radars that will show you the real time, what aircraft is and where. And so had they looked it up at that time, they could have easily determined whether these points of light were fellow aircraft. If not, then it could possibly issue things down the line.
Yeah.
Mostly, they have transponders as well, and go so.
If it's an organized fleet or
Yeah.
sailboats,
Yeah, and another thing is, they don't give like a date of time. I mean, you get where they posted, but this could have been taken, a week before the post or whatever. So we can't really even measure up anything. Or
without the exit.
yeah.
Still interesting in context where there is like lots of talk that South China Sea is kind of a hot spot for a lot of like that sort of appearing. Like
They have like I don't know if Taiwan's included, but the Dragon Triangle over there, kind of like the Bermuda Triangle, where they have a lot of weird stuff happening. Yeah, then there was an article that came out. This was on social media by, I think Mindy posted. Yeah, Mindy posted this one. Just kind of like discuss the organization MUFON. It had some numbers: 7,000 members, 700 field investigators, 200,000 UFO sighting cases with 85 to 87% success rate. And then, just some other stuff kind of. So this was Cincinnati Magazine, and they interviewed David McDonald in it. So that was out there. So this one here, it was on crop circles. There's a bunch of random grab bag stuff for this part. Short one, 46. You got the airy music, so you know it's a true UFO one. Yeah. So this must have been from a while ago. I mean, the footage is really grainy.
When did they shoot this?
I think it did have a location. Scott.
It looks suspiciously like something I saw a number of years ago on television on a special. I think it's the same movie.
What'd they say in the movie?
It was a thing about UFOs, and then I saw the same thing over in Ireland.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it had some lights in there and stuff, so it looked interesting.
It had some lights in there.
Yeah, and then this here, I was going to do coast to coast upcoming shows, but yeah, that was from last month. So I think that's all I got. Are you sharing a story? You want the camera? There, we'll switch this. I don't know which one it is. This one maybe? No.
That's kind of relevant to what you said about if you're imagining words with something that's being told you. So I can share that story.
Go for it. You want to share here or do you want to come up
It
or?
doesn't matter.
Okay.
Whatever works.
I think this will work.
Yeah. Speak up, Teresa.
Oh, you're coming up.
Teresa.
Whatever works for you. That's.
You'll be professional coming up here.
Yeah.
You got the Star of David behind you.
I didn't prepare anything. I didn't know I was gonna speak today, but
Oh, we didn't either.
I feel it's pretty relevant. So, one particular evening in Peru, it was our final ceremony, our final ayahuasca ceremony. And when you go into ceremony, when I go into ceremony, I don't usually ask any questions because I feel like anything that is supposed to come to me, my higher self is going to deliver to me. And so I don't limit myself to my own knowledge asking questions. But this particular evening, I felt like, like if you've had multiple ceremonies, sometimes you feel like, okay, I feel like I've learned enough, or, I don't need to know anymore.
Saturated.
Right. But this time I had a question. And although it sounds like a simple question, the answer I got was not simple. My question was, who am I?
Oh, the big one.
It's a big question, right? And then I did nothing. I actually tried to just go to sleep, which is ridiculous because you can't go to sleep on ayahuasca. And so soon I'm awakened and, here Mother Aya comes and she's like, okay, get up, sleepyhead. It's time to do the work, I'm like, okay. So I remind myself of the question, who am I? And in that moment, I became aware of complete and utter nothingness. How Mother Aya speaks to you is like baby steps. She won't teach you what you need to know here until she teaches you how to crawl first. So I'm like, okay, so I am nothing. I'm like, okay, and she let me sit with that, what felt like a very long time. And so as I'm in this nothingness, and I'm grasping what that means. And no, I'm just gonna say it was like completely nothing, just blank, like I don't have a body. I'm looking around, I don't have a body. I am nothing. And once I truly came to terms with that, all of a sudden I see the universe. I see galaxies and I see stars and I see planets and I see the Milky Way and I see just what looks like space. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, okay, so I'm part of everything. I am everything. And once I really grasped that realization, I was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. And as soon as I'm okay with that, I look down and now I have hands. So now I have a body, but I'm in a spacesuit, which seemed weird to me because if she's just showing me something, why am I in a spacesuit, right? So I'm like, okay, so I'm part of everything. I was like, wow, that's pretty deep. And putting it into words doesn't quite grasp feeling it out. And I'm like, oh, I'm part of everything. I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. I'm part of everything. And then as I'm looking at my hands again, because again, I'm like, wow, I'm in space, this is pretty cool. And once I really grasped I'm part of everything, then I see in my hands the universe that I saw outside of myself. So I'm creating this universe. And I was like, wow, so I'm creating this. And once I really accepted that, then the realization came to me that I am co-creating my reality, my everything. I am part of everything and I am creating it. So when you were talking about everything that you shared, and when you said, what is the difference between a dream or a download? To me, it still baffles me that why would I even be in a spacesuit? So to me, I feel like I was truly there. Otherwise I would have not needed to be in a spacesuit. It also makes me question, as we're talking about fixing another planet in case when we destroy this one, who is they? And why do you think there's a difference between they and us? We are we, period. When you're talking about space travel, it's the same as time travel. We have already developed time travel, whether we can consciously accept that or not. We've already broken through that. Whether it's, science telling us it's true, or the government going to tell us the whole truth, don't hold your breath. It's never going to happen. So my question is, why would my understanding, my knowing is that we are not separate from each other. We are not separate from them. Our consciousness is split in billions and billions of beings so that we can experience ourselves in, if you want to call it alien form, we can use that word. My question is, why are we trying to project our consciousness onto another planet? What's the point of that? Like, are we trying to get a different perspective? Are we running from something? Do we think that this isn't the best place? This isn't the end all be all, So it's just interesting to me. Yes.
What do you think we're running from?
That's my question. And I think that as many different split parts of our consciousness, it can be that many different answers. What is this fear? What is it fear? So I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, so you're sort of indicating that we are them, because you said, who is the them?
Right.
And perhaps indeed it's us.
Right.
So then that gets into the ancient astronaut theory, which is the extraterrestrials that we see and that we interact with occasionally here on
Are us.
Are indeed us
In
another time and space.
So in another form of evolution. So time, it's like soil. It's like all the different layers, they're all parallel. They're all existing at the same time. You can drop down, you can, move up. It all exists. But I feel, and it's interesting to me, because I feel like when we have these sightings of craft and all of this, I feel like it's Mrs. Smith's, history class, bringing her students down for a history lesson, to show, oh, this is where we evolved from. This is what we used to do. We used to, this is how we existed back then. So I would say that's my belief, but it's not a belief. It's a knowing. There's a difference.
Then how do we explain the different species and races of extraterrestrials? Is that just different times in our evolution, perhaps, or what?
Perhaps. How do you explain different races of human beings? I think it's the same thing.
from
know.
different places, with
Correct.
times, more
Different
like
times,
different times,
different cultures, different, different needs, you know.
Different dimensions perhaps.
Absolutely, different dimensions, you know, and I feel that they all exist at the same time.
Mhm.
I'd ask if that makes sense, but I don't know if it does or not, so. All right, that's my story. Yeah.
That was like, I lost it all.
We've been awakened. Layers of soil, a great analogy. I just seeing what the
I think we just kind of.
wrap up. I'll let you, yeah, go ahead, wrap it up.
Yeah,
No. Because I got this. Because of that.
Okay.
Wrap it up here, 5 minutes.
yeah, I think we're gonna wrap this up. The next meeting, if Kyle's gonna have it, will be December 16th, same time, 10 to 10. Whoa.
Somebody's making a lot of noise.
Might I say something before you leave?
Yeah, December 16th, same time, same place.
And for those of you interested, come join our team. Here's the steps of doing it. And
Too bad the manual was over $100.
yeah,
You're gonna be doing.
Nice.
yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna next Saturday. I know it's Thanksgiving weekend, but next Saturday I'm having my Iowa meeting in West Des Moines at the West Des Moines Library. So it's not Zoom; it's an in-person meeting only. So West Des Moines Library from 11 to 2. I'll see you there if you come.
All right, we had one, somebody was speaking up, had a question. We'll do it real quick.
Yeah, I'm doing a project for Project Battery 404. And if anyone has a case that had any battery failures or the lights went out in an area or in the home, would you please send me an email with the case number? And my email address is in the chat room right now. My name is James Baird. Thanks a lot.
All right, sounds good. All right, with that, we'll end the meeting here. Thanks for everybody for joining up, and we'll see you December 16th if you want to come. All right.
Thank you all. It was a very good meeting.
Yeah, thanks for attending.
Yeah.
Well, that's your first view of the new home.